1948, 2009, 2018, and now on the sacred Lansdowne Road soil, 2023. Ireland are Grand Slam champions for the fourth time in their history. The imperious Johnny Sexton got the perfect hometown send-off as he broke a long-standing Ron O'Gara record, while Andy Farrell's much-adored superstars get the piece of silverware that they deserve. We can park the World Cup chat for now. We've loads of time for that. But first, let's celebrate an historic championship. Welcome to the Caelan S Rugby podcast as we take a look back on the 2023 Six Nations with a distinctly happy, jubilant Irish eye to look over it. With me to take a look back on the tournament are three fine guests, two of which I'm sure will perfectly articulate the hyper energy that's seeping across the country this Sunday afternoon. Firstly, from Leinster, a man who may have lost his voice in the Aviva, but we hope he found it since. Welcome on, David Cordial.
Thank you.
Our Ulster representative is a frequent guest on the Red Hand podcast and president of the Stuart McCluskey Appreciation Society. He might be living in England, but he's firmly an Irish fan. Welcome on, Jack Fogarty.
Thank you very much, pal.
And finally, for a balanced outlook, we decided to bring on a Welshman. He's an aspiring and talented journalist and will be sure to remind us Irish fans of how well we have it. So welcome on board, Iestyn Thomas.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Does this mean I have to be on the Connacht side of things, or
No, I'll cover that. It's fine. I'll just scream Bundyacky's name like 5 times, and I think that'll do.
But I prefer Stuart McCluskey over Bundyaki. That's my win.
You're a good man, Iestyn. I've always liked you.
Just playing
Let's
with the crowd.
clip that now. Let's clip that. That's good with that TikTok. We better get started into this because we're already running fashionably late, and of course Ireland Grand Slam champions. And for you at home, you can make a drinking game for how often we utter that phrase this evening. We will not spare it. David, you're the man on the ground. How was the Aviva yesterday to live up to expectations?
It was incredible. It was really. I mean, the Aviva can sometimes be a stadium that gets a bad rap in terms of ambience, in terms of mood, but yesterday it was impeccable. The closest I've seen to that was beating the All Blacks in 2021, and even that, yeah, I didn't think anything topped that day, but yesterday did. It was amazing, right from the anthems all the way through to the finale. It was just incredible, and I think it was a testament to it's a long running conversation about the Aviva and people getting up and down from seats. The one time I did have to go up to use the bathroom, the corridors outside the corridors outside of the seats were empty. There was very little movement. People were, I think the vast majority of that crowd spent 80 minutes sitting in their seats.
It told in some ways, didn't it? Because it was raucous at times. I think the second half, when that pressure valve eased, you could just feel it. You know, it took off. And listen, I may not look 22 years of age, but I am, and I was in the pub watching it. And listening, everyone started singing the Fields of Athenry as well, and it was the same in pubs and homes, the length and breadth of the country. And I think we'll talk about it. Like it's a much loved team, and it shows on nights or afternoons like yesterday. And Jack, you're usually a man of optimism when you frequent the Red Hand. So where does yesterday's triumph rank in the great Irish rugby victories, weekends, and everything in between?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll just mention, of course, we're Grand Slam champions. Anyone at home drink. But yeah, even watching it on just at home here with the family, I could tell the atmosphere was just class there, because the anthems were just incredible. Ron O'Veen and Ireland's Call and just, well, again, good bit of respect shown for the English anthem as well, but it just seemed like everybody who was there was just there for the rugby. Like there's no messing around. So that really kind of teed things up, and looks like it may have even rattled a few of the Irish players because they started a little bit nervy. They kind of sensed the occasion, I think, and it really kind of I suppose it added to it really as a neutral probably watching it. You probably thought, oh geez, this could be a really, really tight game, which it didn't end up being, but for about 50 or 60 minutes we were a bit nervous. We weren't totally sure. So it's just class that they managed to get a home Grand Slam, celebrating with everyone, and afterwards with all the kids running on, Bundy's kids being thrown up in the air, and just all the crack afterwards, just absolutely class. So I mean, it's right up there, and obviously it's got more ties to the the 1948 win, because there was a chap, I don't know if anyone saw it, there's a chap from County Down, Hollywood. He was at the game in 1948, and he was at the Aviva yesterday as well. So just a class bit of just sort of history there, and all of his family were there and things like that. So it's a great bit of kind of a sort of occasion. It does Johnny Sexton's reputation no harm whatsoever, going out on the big one, and just it was class. Nervy, but class.
It was. And although we are waxing lyrical about Johnny Sexton today and all week during the week, and deservedly so, a certain Mr. Voice of Rugby over in the UK has not done the same. So Iestyn, do you want to take us through how's the wind going down across the pond? Because listen, the stats don't lie. This is one of the most dominant Six Nations victories since England in 2003, and we know what they ended up doing.
So Ireland have still got one more to catch up with Alan Wynne-Jones, I believe, in Six Nations titles. But the way they're going, they'll probably catch up quite soon. But I think I saw stats.
One day, and all the Welsh are doing that.
I'm trying my best to fit in, but I saw stats somewhere that all the Irish wins were like more than 10 points. I think the lowest win was 13. 13-point margin. So it wasn't like there was any luck at all in any of those games. All right, you could say with having a flanker throwing in a line out that's an element of good fortune, but they deserved it. And I think the reaction over here is just that Ireland were worthy winners. They dismantled Wales in 20 minutes in Cardiff. They beat the second best side in the competition at home, and they looked quite comfortable, even though there was a couple of moments here and there we thought, oh, France have woken up a little bit. They avoided a really good Italy side, and that was a good game. That was probably one of the games you thought, oh, there could be a shock here, but Ireland got through that. Obviously, the Scotland game was another different type of battle. The Scots came out in the first half with the backs flying around, but Ireland again stopped that, and they just squeezed them out, and they done the same thing again. Obviously, there's a bit more debate about the England game with a certain incident, but yeah, Ireland are worthy winners from I can see over here.
And there's two talking points from this game. One, the Grand Slam is a talking point in and of itself, but it's probably two players in particular. It's Dan Sheehan, who is arguably one of the best hookers in the world right now. And then there's the Freddie Stewart incident. And listen, I know this is a championship review, and personally, I don't think that red card influenced the game, because I genuinely think that Ireland had enough anyway. England showed nothing in attack. They had no clean breaks at all. No line breaks at all. Never mind clean breaks. So, but we'll still discuss it, because there's been so much talk about it, whether it was it red, was it yellow, it was no penalty, it was Keenan's fault, some people said. Anyways, so we'll go around. What I suppose what did you make of it? David, you can go first.
Yeah, so I thought it was red. I thought it was a fair red. It was tough on Freddie Stewart when you're caught in those situations with very little reaction time. It can be tough, but at the same time, by the letter of the law, it's a red card, and like you said, I don't think it influences the game as much as people think. If anything, particularly when it's just going down to 14 men, sometimes a red card can be a galvanizing force for the team that gets it. So you'll sometimes see the team that was carded be the next one to score. It almost they almost raise their level in response to it. I was actually talking to you'll know Caelan, my mother is the president of the Hugo Keenan fan club, so
Yeah.
not to be biased about it, but one point we discussed today was that, you know, you think Freddie Stewart, the red card today, yesterday, you know, 40 minutes down to 14 men. If you think of Charlie Ewels on James Ryan, England were down to 14 for about 75 minutes. It's hard on the team that was red carded for obvious reasons. But another way to look at it is that Hugo Keenan never came back on the field. James Ryan didn't come back on the field. And those are two difference makers for Ireland. So even though the red card is a harsh punishment, the team the other team often suffers as well, particularly when it's head contact, because you lose someone like Hugo Keenan, you lose someone like James Ryan, that has an effect, you know. Jimmy O'Brien came on and did a great job, but you know, Hugo Keenan, if not for that, would have played every minute of this championship, and he's an integral part of the team. So as harsh as the red might sometimes seem, there's a balance there, you know.
Yeah, that's fair. And I suppose we'll just go around, because I think we all think it's red, but just for the sake of discussion, Jack, do you want to go?
Yeah, so I again, you know, they go through their framework, don't they? And I was kind of shushing my sort of family, because I was like, I want to listen to what the ref is saying.
Rugby nerd things.
I know. They're like, oh god, okay, there he goes again. But he was like, there's not really. I think there is some mitigation. There's probably an element of mitigation. If they probably played it at full speed from a wide angle, they probably would have seen that Hugo, you know, the ball goes forward and Hugo tries to. I don't know if they were talking on ITV about this sort of kick feint that he was going to do that maybe put Stewart off. I think Freddie Stewart's just got to make a decision. He just needs to either flatten Keenan legally or pull out and just sort of hands up, you know, hands in the air. I'm not doing anything, sir. Look at me, I'm not doing anything. But instead, he turns, he's not trying to injure him, not, you know, whatever Clive Woodward says about intent, it doesn't make it one bit of difference. If your elbow goes directly into someone's face, you are running the risk of a red card. Doesn't matter what mitigation there is. And in fact, I don't think they even really take into mitigation if it's a direct shoulder, elbow, leading limb, knee, foot, whatever it is. If it makes direct contact to a person's head, like you're asking for trouble. So, you know, if you go back to the Antonio yellow red, was it not? Was it the only thing helping him there is the fact that he's going in to make a legal-ish tackle, but he gets it quite high and gets it wrong. So I mean, yes, I can see mitigation, and we probably would have been happy enough if he gave yellow, but can't really argue against red either. So like we said, guys have gone off and they've got concussion now. They might be out for a couple of weeks, but you know, that's the line that I think the refs have to toe. It's just be like, do not hit people with shoulders or elbows or anything like that. If you do, you will be sent off. You'll quick. I mean, I know we say it a lot, but we'll soon see the technique changing, I hope.
You hope as well. And that's the thing, because we've all talked about it probably on Twitter, you know, and to friends and to family and whatever. And I said, first replay, red card. That was just my own opinion. But if anyone knows me, that's always my first opinion is red card, unless there's a clear angle. It's not reactionary. It's just safety. You know, it's the World Cup, the last World Cup in 2019 was the first big clampdown. And I think there was 6 or 7 red cards in the pool stages alone. And that was quite a bit at that time. That's 4 years ago now. It's a long time ago to be making the same excuse of, oh, it's a quick decision and oh, he doesn't intend. Go read the law book, lads. Intent is not a thing in the referee's degree of danger is, and a shoulder to the face or an elbow to the face, or listen, if Keenan thrown his face into his elbow, what some people may have suggested, it is a red card. And does Stewart get it wrong? Yeah. Does he go in and try and, as you said, maybe try and go for the tackle and then doesn't do it? That's probably what it is, really. But That's the fine margins. Like that is what it is. Yes, and have you a different opinion, or are you sticking with your Irish people so you can get back on again to make jokes about Alan Jones?
No, it just is a red card, really, isn't it? You know, anytime you see someone hit someone else on the head, and you just think, oh, that person's in trouble, and in real speed, it didn't look very good. Obviously, they slowed it down and they showed the replays, and obviously slow-mos make it a little bit worse. But yeah, it was just there's a shoulder to the head, and just a clear red card. And I think most people have. I think most people are already all in agreement, really, that it is a red.
Well, that's really all there is to say. And I suppose moving on from this game, it's been. Listen, it was a good game in its own way, but it's not. I think. How do I put this now? I think it's testament to this Irish team that under Joe Schmidt, they almost played 4 or 5 perfect games to win, whereas under this Andy Farrell team, it's like, well, we played well for a half against Wales, and we played well for 60 minutes against France, and maybe a half against Italy, and 50 minutes against Scotland, and 30 minutes against England, and it got the job done. And that's, like, you talk about that big buzzword, adversity. Like, there was a lot of that. It was an imperfect slam, but yet, like, as I look over here to my right, the under-20s are on course to win a Grand Slam, and hopefully they get it done, and I don't speak too soon. And they'd finish on 27 points, one short of the most you can. Ireland finished on 27 points this year, one short of the most you can. They were James Ryan offload away from the perfect Grand Slam. And I suppose, listen, you can take it game by game if you want, David and Jack, but what was your thoughts on the overall tournament for Ireland? And listen, obviously the French game would go down as one of the classics, but again, Ireland weren't perfect. They've a long way to go, don't they?
Yeah, they really do. If I could just before I go on to that, just touch on something Jack said actually about the Keenan try, or the Keenan the contact with Freddie Stewart. I do think it's a point that it's probably going to be tough for some players to take, because you always want to make a positive impact. But I think the message that always has to go out there is, if you can't tackle legally, you can't tackle. And if that means that you let the guy go by, then that's what you got to do, unfortunately. And I know that's going to be frustrating for players, but yeah, for the game's safety, that's got to be the way it goes.
Yeah.
It was, I don't know, imperfect slam. Is there such a thing as an imperfect slam? You win it.
I think that's all that exists, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's
like,
always, Wales win it, and we say it's because they have a red card machine. We win it. It's by inches. There's always an asterisk. But
jam slam.
Exactly. I think a slam's a slam, and you take it. And even looking back, I watched. There's a good video with a nice script song playing in the background of Ireland's slam in 2018. And you forget how close a lot of that was. I mean, obviously, the standard example is the France game at the start. Johnny with that incredible drop kick from about 40 meters out was just unbelievable. But even the Wales game, it finishes 37-27, and that looks like a comfortable lead. But that last try was scored by Stockdale in the last play of the game. He picked off an intercept. Wales are on attack. If Wales get through there, then there's no slam, and it's a whole different story. So slams are won and lost in very small margins. I think, as you said there, the big thing that stood to Ireland in this tournament was they weren't perfect. For a lot of it, they weren't, and they would say it themselves, and they'd almost hold it up as a badge of honor. They weren't perfect a lot of the time, but they got the job done. And as nervy as Esther was, and as thrilling as it was in the Aviva, and it was, because I think there was some expectation, particularly on pundits or on betting odds sides, that this was going to be a whitewash. England had a tough day at the office last week against France, and there was some expectation that they might have that again. But they put it up to us a lot tougher than we thought they would. But I never doubted for a second that they pull it off, because Ireland's, the two things that stand to Ireland are, number one, when they're given the opportunity, they take it. If it's 15 minutes, if it's 30 minutes, if it's 40 minutes, they'll use that time and they'll score tries. And the other thing that stands to them is their defense. it's very difficult to get past this Irish team. I think I saw a stat that Ireland have conceded less tries in the last 2 Six Nations than any other team conceded in this one.
Yeah,
and that's the story there.
10,
exactly.
10 over the last 2 years to 12.
10 tries in 10 Test matches is unbelievable. The attack is exciting and it's amazing, and if we have one of those nice little tap and go moves, fantastic. But I think the thing that really sets this Irish side apart is that it is very difficult to get a try across against them.
Jack, do you want to go? There's not much left to add, but apart from more sweeping praise, and we're all for it, especially today.
No, yeah, I'll just mention again, Grand Slam champions, so everyone at home drink. But yeah, I mean, you do need those elements of luck, I think, when it comes to winning the Grand Slam. The one in 18 is probably more impressive because you got wins away to good French and English sides. Having France at home and England at home does obviously help, but yeah, the manner of which is more impressive because, like they say, they embraced it. The Andy Farrell style appears to be much more like, I don't really care what happens during the game. We'll just find a way to manage it. Pick your favorite Ian Malcolm quote from Jurassic Park, and they'll just find a way to get the job done. So that is kind of what this Irish team does, and it kind of sums things up when David's saying there about how like you kind of expected Ireland to just get it done yesterday, which didn't seem like they were ever going to lose it, really, just because you thought they're just so good. They just managed to get the job done, and they did. And it's very cool to say that they just did it in their own way, in a new way, and a really, 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 really cool way to do it at home again. So yeah.
No,
sorry,
go on, David, you can go first.
Yeah, just to go off Jack, just very shortly, because I don't want to be dominating the conversation, but I was at the Aviva in 2021 when we played the All Blacks, and I remember when we went in at halftime, and I think we were 5-10 down, and that was against the All Blacks, and I don't think anybody in that stadium was afraid. There was just this sense that these guys are going to get it done. Yeah, they might, they'll take the time to get there, but they'll get it done in the end. And they did, and they seem to always do.
I love that.
Yeah, that's it. And listen, like, you look back on 2018, you look back on 2009, you look back on this year, it's never truly perfect. There's really no such thing as a perfect kind of Grand Slam, is there? Like, no matter who you look at, like, it never is the case. But this team did finish again on 27 points out of 28. That is one offload, and I don't want to labour the back because I think he's player of the tournament, James Ryan. But if that offload to James Lowe sticks, Ireland do what no one has ever done before. They've done what no Irish team has ever done before, in the fact that they've gone back to back England and Wales bonus point wins home and away. Like, last year was the first time we did it in Twickenham, so I believe so, like, by extent of that, like, it's breaking down barriers, it's breaking down walls. And we could talk World Cup. We're not going to talk World Cup in this podcast. There's plenty of time to do that, but this is a team who embraced that challenge. And on the bit you said you weren't worried, the smart thing for me to do would have been text you guys saying that I'm not worried, so at least then I'd have proof. But instead, I sent the text to my girlfriend. But I did say I'm not nervous, and this was just after the knock on in midfield, I think, and it really felt like this is when I told you I was giving it all of this and all for nothing at the end of the day. But I texted and I was like, I'm not nervous. I think we have this. 5 minutes later, Rob Henshaw scores, and you can hear the roars from Lansdowne Road to Limerick. Do you know what I mean? And it's testament to the side that we're never nervous with this team. And I suppose to kind of, I hate to say it, but to dilute the conversation a small bit, we do have Iestyn on, and we are going to talk about Wales. And as great as it's been for Ireland, we don't have the same hype in Wales at the moment. It's been a horrible 8 weeks, 5th place, a pretty poor tournament. There could have been strikes. There could have been everything else. How is the mood on the ground in Wales at the moment, Iestyn? And is it? I know you're not going to go against Warren Gatland. I understand that, but is it too late for Wales to save their calendar year?
Ooh, that's a good question. It hasn't been a good 8 weeks. Far from it. It all started off when Ireland just romped into Cardiff and just blew everyone away, and after the back of the Edinburgh game where Wales were just torn apart by the Scotland backs, you were thinking, oh, this could be a long Six Nations, which got even longer by the potential threat of player strikes, which felt like a long 1.5 weeks, just trying to find out if there was a game going on, if there wasn't a game going on. I still don't think that dispute has gone to bed either. I still think there's still quite a bit of uncertainty going around. But that's off the field management, which is a completely different story, and that could take about 5 hours of explaining, and any solutions would be lovely. But in terms of Gatland, he said after yesterday's game that there's going to be some time that the team is going to be together, and they're going to be able to get a good performance in for the World Cup. Luckily, I touch wood, Wales have got Portugal first, so it's not as bad as having one of the other sides in there, but it's going to be really tough to see how they can turn it around. Obviously, we got a World Cup coming up, and I'm sure we're going to talk about that a bit further. But in terms of Six Nations, it's been really tricky. But Gatland's got quite a big job to do to turn it around.
He does. And listen, again, if a Welsh person came on here and went against Gatland, there's something seriously wrong, because he has the proven track record. But again, you compare it to Ireland, and they're a long way off. And even, like, we might as well just take a look over the 4 teams now, and like, you look at France, Jack, if you want to take them, like, they're the last 2 games. I know they were leaky yesterday, and I think a small part of them knew just get the bonus point win, because if it comes down to points difference, it shouldn't be an issue. It could have been, but it shouldn't be. They look like they're just like, listen, they're finding something, and it's not perfect, but they're finding a way. It's very like Ireland in that way, isn't it?
Yeah, I think when you talk about it, in the way that we were kind of referring to earlier about like an imperfect slam, for the French, it was their turn last year. You know, they got the slam. They had us at home, England at home, and they just seemed like they just built really, really nicely into that tournament, and it just worked for them. They just never, apart from the English game, in Twickenham, where everything just went for them. You know, Galfiku kicks that ball and it just lands in Peno's lap. Little things like that. But then throughout the tournament, they've had a little bit of the opposite of what Ireland had, where you've had those like good 30-minute spells where things are just clicking and it's nice, it's going for you. France had that in bits and bobs, but then there'd be a big turnover or a big penalty win and things get turned over. So France just never quite clicked in all of the games. They clicked for one game, and you know, for bits and bobs of the Scotland game where they just, you know, raced into 19-0 lead. You know, they had Wales exactly where they wanted them the other day, and again, sort of some good determined Welsh sort of play, and you know, some nice some nice moves from the backs. But at the same time, you know, you're at home, you know, you think you're winning and you're 20 points ahead or whatever. You let your foot off the gas and you let Wales back in. And if it weren't for that, they could have put us under a little bit more pressure in terms of the points difference and things like that. So I think the French will probably be actually quite happy enough. They'll probably think, you know what, we've got room to improve. We're not going in as sort of red hot favourites, although they are still probably going in as favourites, because they can just cut up anyone whenever they want to, and they've got absolute superstars in their team. So look, everyone knows how dangerous France are, and if they get their defense back to sort of what it was last year, they'll be very, very, very hard to beat in Paris. So they'll be sort of quietly working away at a few things, and I think they'll be sort of not hugely disappointed with coming second if they end up getting a World Cup win. So they should be happy enough. I'm sure they'll want to win it, but obviously they should be fairly happy with where they are. They've just got a few things to iron out, and I think they'll be incredibly dangerous come the autumn.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think probably the best example of excuse me, you described it there with the right year to get a Grand Slam, or the right year to do things, was Will Greenwood before the tournament said that he reckons Ireland would do the Grand Slam for that reason, because sometimes, even if you don't think it yourself, you are kind of thinking in the back of your head, okay, if we win one of the away to France or away to England game, it's good, and then we push for a championship. And France probably had that last year where they said, this is our year for the Slam. Ireland would have done that yet this year. Johnny Sexton said himself 8 weeks ago, Grand Slam. Do you know, Grand Slam, yeah. And it's hit the nail on the head there. And I think realistically, despite all the hype, despite the meme pages, it was always a 2-horse race. I think that's fair to say. Scotland came third in that 2-horse race. It's if you're a football man, you could compare it to like something Tottenham Hotspur would do. Iestyn, do you want to talk about Scotland and the charade that they almost are now at this stage? They're the new France in some ways, aren't they?
In a way, yes, and in a way, no as well. I don't think they drop off so inconsistently that they just do some mental things like volleying a rugby ball, for example, or something ridiculous that Lionel Boxeis would do. But the times the backs could get the ball and they could run it from about 80 or 60 meters and they'd score a try, and you'd think, oh wow, this Scotland side looks good. And we saw that in the first 2 games. Obviously, the Van der Merwe break with only one shoelace tied up properly was exceptional. And then what he did to Wales was just out of Finn Russell's spell book, and they just managed to just beat out the Wales outside backs, and they just put them to the sword. So, you're 2 from 2. You're playing quite well. And then obviously a daunting trip to Paris. Obviously, the side would be licking their wounds from the Ireland game. So I wasn't expecting that to go plain sailing for them. But I thought in patches they played well. And then they kind of just threw it all away then against Ireland when they had a really good opportunity. They were in it at half time, and they just couldn't see it out. And I think they need a little bit more of an edge up front to really, really compete. They can keep their backs as much as they want. They got Darcy Graham coming back soon, which is going to be fun because I really rate Darcy Graham. But I think they just need a little bit more edge up front. They need to copy a little bit what Ireland do, a little bit what France do, and they just need to get that pack going strong, and they'll be there. But the backs are certainly up there, but they just need a bit more edge up front.
I think that's fair, really, because listen, if people want to hear what I have to say on Scotland, they can read one of my articles, and I went to town on them, and it didn't go down too well in the Scottish rugby community. And I went on the Harper on Rugby podcast, and I did the same thing. And I don't hate Scotland. I think Finn Russell, for instance, is a wonderful player, but still give me Johnny Sexton any day of the week because it's Test rugby. And that's kind of like, we're doing this in order, and I'll take England, and I think this is where the comparisons to England are. Yeah, you can play Marcus Smith, but I think yesterday showed why Owen Farrell is still their best 10, because Marcus Smith doesn't keep them in that game. Like, he's a wonderful talent. Don't get me wrong, he's a wonderful, talented rugby player. But like, if you ask me who do I want at 10, I want Ross Byrne at 10 over Marcus Smith in a game like yesterday. Do you know? And to be honest, I was on a Zoom call there before a preview night thing during COVID, and I said, what about England? And we said, we don't know about England. This was for last year's tournament. And it was the same again this year. It's like, we don't know. Like, this Steve Borthwick has come in, and listen, again, this may not go down well. I don't think the Premiership is a good league. I don't think it breeds test international players. I look at the likes of Van Poortvliet, brilliant for Leicester, probably the weakest of scrum halves alongside Varney. You look at Marcus Smith, wonderful player for Quins, but it's a very different game. Like the Premiership for me is a bit of it's like a sevens competition played by 15 players. Like it's fun, don't get me wrong, but there is no jeopardy. There is no high-end quality. There is a lot of very good players in the league. And I think England, listen, Steve Borthwick is in some ways their Andy Farrell appointment. He's kind of the continuity appointment in the fact that he was in and around the camp before. He was with high-flying Leicester, and he's a good head coach. But I think as long as the Premiership struggles, they're going to need to do something like what Wales did for years, where we can shake that to one side. Do you know what I mean? You can just park it and just say, right, Team England is different. Because until they reach that point, I think they are going to be looking and thinking, I don't know, like, are we, what style are we trying to play? What are we going to do? Like, yesterday was their best performance, no doubt. They defensively were solid, but still, I look at that 23 and like, I take Hugo Keane over Freddie Stewart. I take Johnny Sexton over Owen Farrell. To be quite honest, I think the only person in that English team who makes the Irish team on form is Jack Willis. And that's not arrogant Ireland here, just purely on form. And I think that's an issue for England, because if you want to play, the French game showed it, if you want to play an abrasive, physical front up game plan, you need to give 125% effort. Wales under Sean Edwards did that brilliantly. They were the fittest team. They were the hardest working team for a long, long time. And England don't have that. And I think England will actually get to a World Cup semi-final because of the draw, and that, again, that's another different day's conversation. But I really don't think they're a great team at the moment. And again, we all felt easy midway through that second half for Ireland. We all felt like, yeah, they're going to get the job done. This is England. They have more playing numbers than Ireland and Wales and Scotland. But yet, I know Wales are Wales at the moment, but yet it still felt like, yeah, we can beat them, and it's not great shakes for them, to be honest. And listen, that's just my spree now. And we'll go back to the final team, Italy. And David, you've been waxing lyrical about Italy for, I don't know, maybe 20 years, probably, knowing you. But do you want to take this one and round it off with the Italy are okay?
It's if it's not Italy, it's Zebra. You know me, I love an underdog. Italy, like, all things considered, I think the only game that really didn't go Italy's way this tournament was the Welsh game. I don't know that we were expecting them to win more than that. They are definitely still, and I know they are annoyed by it. And I've seen Michele Lamaro be interviewed enough times that I know he's kind of sick of they played well, but they lost at edge. But I think that's where they're living at the moment. Italy played against their best games against the best teams in the tournament. I think Italy's two best games were against Ireland and against France. I think it's easy to forget that, like, the French game was the first game of the tournament, but there was one Tommaso Allen penalty in, I think it was about the 65th minute. If Italy slotted that, they would have won that game. It was 29-27. They were very close to winning it 30-29. And then obviously they pushed us a lot harder than we'd been pushed in the first two games, even by France. I think Italy played better against us than France played against us. And it's just really disappointing that, having shown all that, it's very clear you have people like Michele Lamaro, you have people like Ange Capozzo, you have people like Paolo Garbisi. They have the quality. Gone are the days when Sergio Parisi was the only good player in that team. They have talent throughout their team. And unfortunately, they decided to play their worst game against the one team they were on sign to beat. And to be fair to Wales showed up that day. There was an aspect of Wales, and it's been a very tough year for the Welsh. My commiserations to my Welsh colleague. But Wales did show up that day like, no, we're not going to go down that easy. We're not going to fulfill that that expectation. We're gonna show up, and Wales did show up that day. So credit to Wales for that one. But I'd say there's a degree of frustration in Italy there because, and you could see it in Lamro when he was interviewed afterwards. That was a game they were targeting, and of all the games in the tournament, it was the one that they came up shortest in.
And that's fair. And I think, listen, just as we record this, Ireland are under 20 Grand Slam champions, but earlier on the day, Italy just gave Scotland a thumping. And I believe, did they beat Wales as well, Iestyn? You might.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, it was
know.
a close game, but Italy, I think it was something like 20-25 or something like that. It was quite a high scoring game, but yeah, Italy did win.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like they beat Scotland, they beat Wales, they ran Ireland close for 60 minutes. They ran England or France. I think it was France close, and actually both of them. Like they're coming. They're like, give them time. Hopefully they, through Franco Smith, they build good structures and they push on. Now, unfortunately, not a lot of people are here to listen to four fans talk about structures of Italian rugby.
On that, Galen, a day will come when we regret how much we hyped up Italian rugby. A day will come when we're like, I missed the days when we could beat them.
Yeah, absolutely will.
They're gonna, it's a big enough country, and if anyone's ever watched an Italian person watch a soccer game, it's a country that loves sport. So when they come gun rugby, they're gonna be something else.
Yeah, that's the exact reason why I don't want South Africa in the Six Nations, because it'll make us revisit everything. But yeah, we'll move on from that and the hypotheticals and move on to another hypothetical. I said we do a team in the tournament, and the way we decided to do it was we go off my team, which is not a very smart idea because I am incredibly biased. But we'll go from here, and you can interject at any point. So I'll just list it out. At number 1, I went for Danilo Fischetti of Italy. At number 2, Dan Sheehan, player of the match yesterday. And number 3, I cheated here, massively cheated. I moved Andrew Porter back to tight head just because Porter was probably the best loose head. There was no standout tight heads, and Fischetti was my prop on fantasy team who did very well for me. So I'm going to hold my hands up there. Like, are you happy with that, or do you want to change it?
I'd say the only person you could put in for the tight head is Finlay Bealham, because he played the 3 games that he played really bloody well, and he just was solid as a rock. So there's really no other standout tight head that I can think of apart from maybe Ferrari, the other Italian prop, because
ironically named Italian prop.
yeah. I love that. I absolutely love that. I wonder if there's a fate. No. He there's no real massive standout. I think I noticed that Stephen Jones put Tyke Furlong in his team of the tournament, I think, which is quite funny.
He's just trying to win us back over. That's all.
Oh, he loves it, doesn't he?
No, he hit on Sexton today, so no, you can't do both. But funnily enough, I didn't even consider Furlong, not because of the 2 games, but because I actually thought he was poor yesterday. And
it wasn't his best, no.
If I was going for anyone, I'd go for Bealham. But again, can you put a lad in with 3 games? You probably can't.
I thought Furlong was probably Furlong was workman, and I think, if anything, I think Tigers fell victim to the same thing that Conor Murray used to fall victim to, where you have a player who is on their best
standards.
Yeah, they're the best in their position. And the day when they just show up without showing off, you think, what's going on here? But it was a fine performance. I thought Bealham, for all those videos of Tyke Furlong throwing mad passes and sidestepping Finn Russell, Finlay Bealham was like, all right, well, let me show you what I can do. That pass, that whole move, and obviously it was a team move, but that pass to set Keenan off to score against France, I mean, it's just unreal. So yeah, if Bealham had not gotten injured, I think you'd have to have had him at 3. But injuries are a part of the game. It's cruel, but it's the nature of the thing.
That is. Finlay Bealham basically went into this championship. He said, "Let me fix my cornrows, and I'm going to take Tyke for a spot." And boy, did he! At second in a row now, I went for my player of the tournament, and that's a spoiler for the next question, I went for James Ryan and Thibaut Flamand. And if you object to that, I will be shocked. Don't say Adam Beard. We discussed this.
I wasn't. I'm just looking through the options here, and I'm thinking that you're again. Flamand has a cracker of a game, and James Ryan has been, I think, consistently very, very, very good. The only one I think Federico Ruzza has been excellent for Italy. But again, he's in a pack going backwards a little bit. And I thought both of the Gray brothers played particularly well for most of the tournament again, and they're probably close honourable mentions perhaps for those fellas. Don't know about anyone else, but
do you want to jump in, lads? Is there anyone else you put in there?
I would have stuck with Ruzza, but that's me being a big advocate for Italian rugby as well. So obviously Flamand has been out of this world, but obviously the French have had Willemse injured for a bit this week, so you couldn't really pick a second one with him. Obviously leaves with James Ryan, who's been very, very good. Would have picked Ryan Bird, is it? The other Leinster second row.
Yep.
I think he's been a real up and coming star from his Six Nations. I think he's someone that that's shown the international stage what he is. But obviously, I think it'll have to be James Ryan, as much as it pains me to say it. But yeah, the Welsh locks weren't really up for it. I think they were missing Will Rowlands a little bit, in fairness. Ollie Chesham could be one, but obviously England went outstanding. And like you said, the Gray brothers were quite good for Scotland. But yeah, I think Flamand and Ryan is the correct picks.
I'm going to keep poking the bear, and I'm going to say the fact that we're having this discussion without Maro Itoje said something, because he's 27, 28 years of age now. This, it's mad to think they need a quiet tournament. That's just the way it is. The back row, I again cheated at back row. I want to put Peter O'Mahony in there, not because of his garden, but because I think he was brilliant the last two games. I'll always hold my hand up and say Peter O'Mahony is a god in down these parts. But I went with Josh van der Fleer at 7. Could have went with him at hooker. But why would Keith Healy at hooker? Why didn't? Why would Josh van der Fleer at 7? His supposed first position. I went with Jack Willis at 6 because I think he was England's standout back row. Some people said Ludlam, but I just didn't see it. I just thought it was Willis all day. And at number 8, I think David knows who I'm going to say. I think Jack knows who I'm going to say. It's Caelan Doris. So again, have you any objections? I think the Willis one is the obvious ones. And I'll go through the obvious short list or long list of candidates after this.
I'm on mute.
Go on. Sorry.
No, you're going. No, go ahead. My fault for muting myself. Go ahead.
I'll probably have Francois Crowe at 6. I think that's my only one that I'd argue with, because I thought he was absolutely superb against England, and I think he's one of those underrated types of players. Even though him and Greg Aldrich wear the same scrum cap, I thought Crowe was superb against England. I thought that was probably enough for him. But and then obviously you got Greg. Like I said, Aldrich is just a fine rugby player in just whatever games he plays in. And yeah, those the only two that I'd probably wager a spot in. If I had to pick one, it'd probably be Crowe at 6.
Yep. Lads, Antonins.
Anecdotally, I have a good friend of mine spontaneously yesterday was asking me, is there a guy who plays for Ireland? His initials are VDF. I was like, yeah, no, Josh van der Fleer. She's like, oh yeah, I used to work with his dad. He's really nice. And if there was anything less surprising, it was that Josh van der Fleer's dad is nice, because it's not off the ground he licks it. As well as being an incredible rugby player, he seems like a very, very decent human being.
And a good golfer as well.
And an annoyingly good golfer.
Yeah.
Down to single figure handicaps after only 3 years. It's unbelievable. But no.
There's ever a measure of a man.
Yeah, exactly. I think my only argument, and it might be the one thing I disagree with Andy Farrell on, is that one of the second rows I think is actually one of the best back rows. I don't think Ryan Baird should be playing second row. I think he's a six. And I think if he was played at six, he could be one of the best. And does not say he can't do a job at lock, he can, but I think if you put him at six, he'd be up there. And that's a hard position to shift, while Peter O'Mahony's there, because for all the flack he gets, Peter O'Mahony's a big game player. He never doesn't show up for Ireland, no matter what's happening at provincial level. But I think Ryan Baird could be one of the best sixes out there.
Yeah, that's fair. And he did do well in his chance, and Jack will love this, but I actually reckon we should have left him on the bench the last day and brought him on with about 30 minutes to go, started Treadwell, and just have him bursting out of the gate. Because even he does go through spurts where he's unbelievable. I think it's just the naivety of youth. Like, he's only 23, which is mad to think.
It's annoyingly young.
And
really annoyingly young.
Absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, but listen, we'll have our existential midlife crisis in another podcast. I don't know what we'll call it. We'll call it something else. But as well, so Francois Crowe got a mention. Anthony Gelange would get a mention if he played more than 2 games, I think. Negri is another one. Canone was brilliant against Ireland. I think Welsh back
grew into the tournament quite nicely. Olivon was pretty good.
Yeah, he grew into it, didn't he?
Yeah.
Started slow and was brilliant.
God, it was good to see him back. Like, after he had like an amazing tournament a few years ago, and then the injury took it from him and took the captaincy from him. Like, it's easy to forget that he used to be France's captain, but no, he's an incredible player on his day.
I would throw in, I think a couple of the Welsh lads had good performances, and then just kind of didn't back them up. But I think that's just a sign of a team that doesn't get going. 9 and 10 is probably the most hands-on at 9, and probably the most egregious pick at 10, if we based it off of Instagram and memes and whatever. So going with Dupont at 9, Mr. Yellow dressing gown, and at number 10, Mr. Jonathan Sexton. So what do you think?
I would go Finn Russell, just because he's got the if you go individually individually based, Finn Russell individually had a better tournament. Johnny Sexton just makes everyone else look good.
I have strong opinions, so I'll let you finish talking before.
But yeah,
here we go.
Just me personally, if I was picking it, if I'd be brutally honest with you, I probably would just have in a sort of a team of a tournament, which is a little obviously sort of complete fantasy. That Finn Russell was just he's got that fun X factor and makes things happen, and he's probably gonna throw a load of interceptions as well, but just for the crack that he brings, it's probably just stick him in there, because Johnny Sexton will just get the job done and it'll be a bit boring. So we don't want that. We want to have a bit of drama. So I'd whack Finn in there, but
I quite like to win, actually. And Finn, I love Finn Russell, but what has he won?
Perfectly good.
He has won the same amount as Danny Barnes, for instance. 1 league title, 1 Magners League. Not a lot. But anyways, Danny Barnes, he was actually Munster's starting 13 and won the last league title. We talked about this before the podcast. So there you go. Okay. David, you're going to tell me how great Johnny Sexton is, and he's ahead of Finn Russell. And the intellectual heavyweights of a group chat that we're in, I won't name names, they will 100% agree with you on this. So come on.
They always do. It's not just about how good Johnny Sexton is. I mean, he's brilliant. If you talk about someone who enables the rest of the team to be good, there's an old story about, I think it was George Washington of all people, that he wasn't particularly good at anything, but he was good. He was very good at recognizing greatness in other people and getting the best out of them. And that's what a good leader does. A good leader delegates. A good leader is an enabler, makes other people look good. And Johnny Sexton does that. Finn Russell is a very, very good player, but I think for me, Finn Russell falls into the same category as Marcus Smith. They're very good when you have a whole season. The thing about Test rugby is that if you're Irish anyway, there are 11 games in the year. That's not that much. We talk a lot about somebody deserves a cap, someone deserves a start, et cetera, et cetera. There are only 11 games in a year, and 5 of them are in a a very tight competition. I just don't think there's room in that kind of tight schedule for someone who throws intercepts enough that it's a talking point. Finn Russell is a very, very, very good player, and I love the way he plays rugby. I'd actually, in terms of enjoyment, I'd put him in the same category as James Lowe, and anyone who knows me knows that that's very high praise. I literally have a James Lowe blanket. He's someone who enjoys the game, and the people who watch him play enjoy watching him play. Like, he's that level of character. But when it comes to Test rugby, sometimes you want a boring guy who wins games, and that's Johnny Sexton. It's not Finn Russell. And that's not to say I think Johnny's boring. I think Johnny's class. But if I had to pick one of them, I'm picking Johnny every day of the week.
It's like my point on Marcus Smith and Owen Farrell earlier. It depends on what you want, really. And for me, it's always going to be Johnny. As much I love Finn Russell, I think he's a really good player, was always going to be Sexton for me. At 12 and 13, I think 12 is nailed on. I went with Sione Tuipulotu, who I think really added something to Scotland's attack more than, say, like, oh, Russell does great. It's like, he does great because he's got a lad who can sit down defenders as well. And then at 13, probably more controversially, I went with Gary Ringrose. So if you want to, who would you throw in there? I'm trying to think. You go to Slade, kind of did okay, maybe.
Nah.
I'm drawing a blank. Brex, I actually thought was very good. And
Well,
Joe Hawkins at 12 would be up there.
You're looking at Hugh Jones and Gail Fickou really as the 13s. There's no real standout 12s. I mean, I could just mention Stuart McCluskey as the fan club, but he played very well for the 3 games that he did play. But in terms of someone who went across the whole, or at least maybe barring one game, Gary Ringrose is right up there, both sort of attackingly and defensively. Hugh Jones probably just has that little bit of spark with the ball, but again, are you looking for a more solid sort of all-round 13, which Gary Ringrose is certainly that mold at the minute. But yeah, I would have Tuipulotu and Ringrose as my centers if it were me.
Yeah, that's fair. And actually, just while running, because I think they did okay. What was your thoughts on the Joe Hawkins Mason Grady experiment, Iestyn?
Yeah, I thought it was good. Obviously, they're going to have defensive mishaps. That didn't really help with Owen Williams at 10, who's got so few caps as well. I think against England and against Italy, the 2 tries were set up. They fixed Owen Watkin, so it looked like not Owen Watkin. They fixed Owen Williams, and I don't know why I'm thinking about Owen Watkin. Maybe because I do really rate him as a player, but that's another story.
Osprey's bias. Anyway.
They fixed Owen Williams, and it just made it look like the centres were at fault, but it was just a defensive issue that Wales had for the tournament. And even with North and Tompkins there and Super Saturday, they were exposed a couple of times. But on the whole, I thought Grady and Hawkins did well. I've seen Joe Hawkins come from 18s, 20s, and into the senior setup, and it still amazes me on how much of a boot he's got. I think one day he'll shift to 10, but for his size, I think at the moment he'd still be playing at 12. But in terms of the team of the tournament, I'd probably cheat a little bit and move Fickou to 12 because I think he's just a genuinely class player, and I would have Hugh Jones at 13 because I think he's improved quite a lot over the last couple of years or so. I thought he was just a really tidy centre, but I think he's probably leveled up a little bit more, and I think he's showing that he's really, really good. But the Welsh centres went fine. Obviously, they're going to make mistakes because they're so young, but they were solid enough, and hopefully they'll be the centre pairing for the autumn for the World Cup.
Yeah, I actually agree. Go on, Jack.
I was just gonna agree with you there. Yes, and I think they're your kind of, they should be your kind of centers going forward, and you've got good experience with like North, who can play across the back line. I think he's your kind of backup and on the bench kind of guy who can cover a lot of positions. And I think Mason Grady's got a hell of a highlight reel for Cardiff, and Hawkins just looks like a very, very clever sort of rugby brain. Anyone who knows me knows I like the guy who can kind of read a game really well, and he just seems like he got the better of McCluskey. So I mean that's saying something, and I'll hold my hands up and I'll say he nearly got him there, but Stu obviously just did enough. But yeah, there are a couple of good centres you've got there. So.
Well, we're going to need to start wrapping things up soon. So we go on to the back three. And again, slight cheating because my number 11 played all 400 minutes. Sorry, maths is letting me down. 400 minutes of the championship at number 14. But I've gone with Mystic Mac Hansen, who is, I'm going to say it right here. I would love to interview that man while he's still not media trained. He is a delight. Yes, you may not be seeing the clips, but he is absolutely wonderful. At 14, I went with the most elusive and most unsounding Frenchman you will ever see, and that's Damien Penaud. And at 15, I'll let David take that one. Who do you think I went at 15, David?
It's got to be Hugo Keenan.
It is Hugo Keenan. Of course it is. Ron van der Merwe is the obvious one. Is there anyone else you want to throw into the mix?
I thought, don't want to be negative, I thought Van der Merwe, as good as he is, he had a very, very good moment against England, and like that try was incredible. Outside of that, though, I thought he wasn't necessarily up to his usual standards. Every game after that, I just seemed to see a highlight reel of people being able to stop him, which is a tough thing to do because he's a very big man. Like, he's very strong. But no, I don't think he had his best tournament, as good as he is.
Beat 33 defenders, though, I think.
He did. No, yeah.
Which is phenomenal.
They might have all been English, though, to be fair.
Or Welsh. Yeah. 20 in those two games alone, I'd say. Five of them are Alex Dombrandt. And anyway, that's another conversation.
I did, and this is just like a talking point I saw. I think it was on Off the Ball. I'm not sure where I saw it. That someone had Mac Hansen, as good as he is on the wing, and he's brilliant. I thought he had a really good tournament. That someone was saying that he could be reasonably in Ireland's consideration for number 10. He's that good a ball player, he's that good a kicker, like he's that good an analyst of the game that he could genuinely do a job 10. And I think it's something he has done before when he was playing back with the Brumbies in Australia.
It's like the Finn thing, though, isn't it? Because it's kind of like, I'd love to see Mac at 10. And then when you do see Mac at 10, you'd be absolutely worried. That run that he went on in the first half was like, don't do that. Don't. And then makes 30 yards.
And I think I'd like to see him do it at least once at provincial level before I gave him it at test level. But it's not the worst idea in the world. Like,
he's actually not got the pace to be international winger, so you might as well.
Yeah, well, he's better than Balogun. But anyways, no disrespect to Balogun.
At least let the man get back from injury first.
Them fighting words. He's no Rob Little, though. So.
Yeah, it's not my fault that Dan McFarland uses Robert Balogun wrong, but if you want me to talk about Ulster Rugby,
let's not get into systems and all that nonsense, all right? You know, if Ulster want to play the way they want to play, they're still the second best province in Ireland, so
they are in their hoop. Anyways, yes, can you settle this debate versus is there anyone else? I'm going to mute Jack, I think.
I just want to agree with Jack. I actually prefer Balogun. I thought,
mute Iestyn as well.
I remember last season when the Ospreys welcomed Ulster in the URC. I remember Balogun and McCloskey were both playing, and I thought, well, those two had very good first halves before they were a bit quiet in the second half as the pack lost a bit of momentum. The Ulster pack that day, with Stephen Myler kicking penalties from everywhere, which was a really good result. That was, especially after beating them a couple of weeks before, which was even better. But in terms of team of the tournament, I've got one for fullback. I was going to say Capwater, and then I realised he hasn't played for ages. And even though the first two games he was superb, I thought, nah, it's too late. But the only one I've got against Keenan would probably be Thomas Ramos. Yeah, I don't think I've seen him play that consistently well before.
He never has. He's like another Ewan Huget. He will do something brilliant, and then he'll just do something silly.
Oh,
he's been incredible this tournament. Like,
no one would be as mad as Johan Uge, but
I'm gonna say I love Johan Uge. I miss him at that level so much. He was so much fun.
I thought Ramos added that consistency to his game, and I thought he picked really well. You know, we saw against England that he was just hitting any conversion from anywhere, and even against Wales as well. Some of the touchline conversions he hit was just superb. Obviously, you can have Van der Merwe in there, yeah, I'd have Penno on the right and probably have Van der Merwe on the left with Ramos a full back just to be different, because that's where I like to be. And my fantasy team has Gabisi at 10, so you know who's the real winner.
Oh, good man.
I'm just going to throw out there that no one has said Freddie Stewart, so I think none of us are getting a punditry gig on BT anytime soon.
No, he's not. He's not a standout fullback though. He's just he's
solid.
A very solid player. Like I don't see the massive hype about it. He's a big lad. He's like 6'5". What is he? So like he's gonna make yards in contact. He's not.
He's got a massive elbow as well, apparently.
If Freddie Stewart suffers from anything, it's the amount of praise that he gets heaped on him.
Yeah,
because he's not a bad player. He's a decent player, but like Jesus, the way he gets talked about in the British media would make you think that he was like the next coming. Like he's a good player, but he's not. Certainly in the last championship anyway, he's been good, but he's not been blowing the roof off of anywhere.
We'll go around the room finally. Player of the tournament and moment of the tournament. We'll go player of the tournament. We'll get that out of the way first. Iestyn, do you want to go first on player of the tournament?
I haven't really thought about this one.
Please pick an Irish lad. You haven't picked an Irish lad in 5 minutes.
No. Take RPC.
No, I thought as much as I do love Gavisi, I thought he wasn't up to his usual standards this year. I don't know. It just felt like there's a couple of errors creeping in. I'm sure he'll polish that out because that's who he is. I don't know who to pick. He obviously got Dupont. I'd want to say Sexton, but I think one of the Irish pack probably deserves it more. So I think just for his cameo at hook, I'd probably give it to Van der Fleer. Yeah, I think that man is very good. Dupont's a close second, mind. There's not much in it, but Van der Fleer first with Dupont second.
Yeah. Jack, do you want to go? You're probably going to say Rob Herring.
Sure. Yeah, Rob Herring is my That's
Tom Stewart.
McCloskey second.
No, it's obviously Stuart McCluskey. No. Caelan Doris. I think he's just. I would love to see his stats just for the whole tournament as a whole, because I'd love to know how many errors he made in the whole tournament, because I would nigh on guarantee that it's less than 5 or something.
And if it's 5, 3 of them were yesterday. It was kind of like that. Like yesterday was his off day, and he was quietly effective.
Still getting over the gain line marginally, like not massively, but just I think he's just class. But if you had it over the last two rounds, it'd be Peter O'Mahony, because he's just been just absolutely unreal. Have to go with the Munster boys on that, yes. Because he was excellent. He just does everything right, doesn't he? So, but Doris would be mine.
Yeah, David, will we have 4 different people? Because I already said who mine is, but I'll touch on it in a bit. But who do you want to go for?
It's a bit of a cliche, but I've got to go with Johnny. Nice. I thought he was brilliant. I thought he was a difference maker. He always is. The Italian game was one of our toughest, and it was the one he didn't play in. And it might seem trite to say, but it's got to be a talking point that the man's 37. He's almost 38, and he's still, by a distance, the best out of half in Ireland, and one of the best in the world. And to still be doing what he's doing at that age, with that level of consistency, he's unbelievable. Like he's a phenomenon. Tom Brady throws balls around for a living and gets a lot of plaudits. Johnny Sexton blows someone like that out of the water every day of the week. I just think he's brilliant.
Yeah,
he is. I made this point as kind of a joke, but it actually ended up getting like 2,000 likes on Twitter. But I said that the biggest compliment I can give Johnny is I grew up as a Ron Regara fan, and now I think Johnny he's better than Wilkinson. That's my honest opinion. And like that was supposed to be a joke, and people were like, oh yeah, he's great. He's Johnny, the last Six Nations game at home and all that. And I think he was brilliant. But I'm going to go for James Ryan. As I said, I think James Ryan, since the first test in New Zealand, where he was kind of blown out of the water by Sam Whitelock, ever since then, he's been a different player. He's been the player we want him to be. And Rob Kearney came on yesterday and he said Paul O'Connell's impact is huge. And I think it is. And I think some of it is James Ryan's just found his feet at international level again, because it's tough. It's tough when you're asking a lad like him, who's not a massive second row, but he's also not a elusive second row like a Baird or a Byrne, when you're asking him to do the grunt work. That's why himself and Henderson worked well together, because Henderson would do that and he'd focus on everything else, and they kind of overlapped then a bit. But I think this was his best tournament. I think, listen, props don't get enough love. Second rows don't either. So I'm going to go with James Ryan as my player of the tournament, and I'd just go with favorite moment.
He's that player. He's that player who's threatening to be in his first season.
Yeah.
When he was playing for Ireland before he's playing for Leinster. Sure. That he's that player.
From Munster before he played for Leinster. Well, just go throw it out there.
Yeah. But also, I wasn't taking a shot at Tom Brady. I was just mentioning him because Sexton has mentioned him. I don't have anything against the dude, but yeah, in general.
You could, but we don't. I'll start off the favorite moment. I think you could have a few. Like if Italy had won, we'd probably all say that, kind of like last year. Similarly with Wales when they finally got a win. Great to see the minnows winning. Sorry, Iestyn. But for me, I think the moment that summed up everything was not full time in the Aviva. Was the 2 minutes from 78 to the 80th minute. That place was raucous. And I couldn't, and I said this, it's been so, we've been on a while now, I'm rambling on. I can't remember if I said it on this or before we came on, but I was in the pub watching it and we were all singing the Fields of Athenry. And then I watched it back this evening, watched the second half back. It was so loud. It was unbelievable. And I think I don't think it's like a turning point or like, oh, wow, like Irish fans doing it. It's nothing like that. It's just a case of that was the moment where you knew, but that was also the moment where you felt incredibly proud of this team, because not a lot of people watched them beat New Zealand because it was on Sky Sports. Whereas when the viewing figures come out this week, you're looking at over 1 million people here in Ireland and a lot more across the world. And I think that was, like 2018 and like 2009, that was a moment where you just felt very proud, and we just sang and we enjoyed it. And it was like the tries are special, the full-time whistle, lifting the trophy, Johnny coming off, they're all special moments, but that was just goosebumps moment. David, if you want to steal that one, because you were there and you actually can steal that one, you can. But what would you go for?
I was going to be a bit of an arsehole about it. I just because it encapsulates the player so well, I really loved James Lowe's try against France, because it so obviously shouldn't have been a try. And it so obviously shouldn't have been a try that he knew it wasn't a try. And
that face he made where he just,
I really want to ask him someday if they had a conversation, because if I was Andy Farrell, if I was Leo Cullen, I'd be like, look, you're a great player, but we've got to work in your poker face because you're a little bit too honest. You get the try, and you go for it. I just love that James Lowe turned around and he gave the camera kind of a look, where you're like, oh, I was like, it's like, it's forgiven, cut it out. I just, for the athleticism in it, even, like take the efficacy of whether or not it was extra or not, the athleticism in that move, both from him and from the player tackling him, was incredible. But just because it is a sport that is so tightly wound, and like we always talk about players being so media trained and how that's, it can be funny, but it's not always that good crack. James Lowe is just a player who plays the game because he loves to play the game, and he's irrepressibly honest about it. So I love that moment, because that was a guy who was like, this matters, like in a big way. This matters. If we score this try, we're probably going to win the game. If we don't, who knows? And he still couldn't stop himself from going, that wasn't a try. So that's my moment of the tournament.
Yes, and do you want to go next? What is your outstanding moment of the 2023 Guinness Six Nations, the final Guinness Six Nations as well? Like, you didn't realise sponsorship ends.
I don't think I got one if we finish with fifth. Probably a niche one would be round 3. There's an intercepted try in every game because I'm a big fan of interception tries. And there's quite a few actually thinking about it. You obviously got James Lowe in Cardiff, and then round 3 there was Bruno's getting one, Zamet got one, and then Ramos got one. I'm trying to think if there's any others, but I just like the start. There was one interception try in each of the round 3 games, so I always like one of them. But it was probably the highlight of the championship was seeing Reece Webb box kicking so well against Italy, and especially the 50-22, which came after a really good box kick, which was from a restart, and the ball just bounces back, and all of a sudden Wales are in the 22 because of Reece Webb's boot. And I at the start of the tournament, I wasn't expecting that, because I've seen Webb for quite a long time, and his kicking's not quite been his strongest point. So that 50-22 was probably the only highlight for me.
It's niche, but I like it.
But yeah,
watching him, I was thinking, why is he not in Wales' scrum half for years? He was brilliant. I know he's not always been great, but he had a great tournament.
But mainly because he's been in Toulon, and then obviously that ruled him out of the 2019 World Cup. And then Wayne Pivac, for some reason, didn't really rate
the cap rule that they have. It's like 50 caps or something like that.
It was 60 caps.
Yeah.
So obviously then he returned to the Ospreys in 2020, just as COVID was kicking off. So and then Wayne Pivac just thought he didn't really rate him, so he just wasn't put in any squads. And well, obviously his first game back, and you get a win when you're 0 from 3, you get a win, and you're probably relieved about it, especially with the 53 minutes he played and he got man of the match. So probably that individual performance in the whole was probably a highlight, but that 50-22 was something special. Closely followed by DuPont's run at Twickenham a couple of hours later, which was
that was good. The dummy and then the goal. Yeah, that was good. Finally, Jack, have you a standout moment? And if it is Jordan McCluskey's turnover on the 5-meter line against France, so be it. I'll take it. Whatever you want to show in.
If that's your favorite moment, then that's okay with me. But yeah, it's either Johnny Sexton breaking the record yesterday for the points, or Conan's offload for the Sheehan score, just because that was what, 60 minutes. That was the kind of the score that we Robbie scored
about
before
68
that,
minutes or so, I think.
Okay, so I think maybe England got
that put us 3 scores ahead.
So yeah, so I think that just to sort of give the fans a bit. I went mental in the living room when he threw that offload, because I was just like, that's ridiculous, Conan. Yeah. And yeah, just on the final weekend to throw in something like that after he had a few question marks himself, I think Conan of whether he can play in the system or whether he can play with Doris, etc. But yeah, I think it has to be Johnny breaking the record, because it's because of what he's done and how I guess he got into international rugby a bit later than most, so he even more impressive that he's done it. He's nearly 40, but he's still there.
Bundiaki said he was 45 yesterday. I don't think that's factually correct, but listen, if the players want to joke about it, why can't we?
I saw James Lowe earnestly say nice things about him, and then almost have to catch himself and say, "Oh, don't tell him I said that though." I was like, if you can get James Lowe to be earnest about praise, you're pretty special.
That's true, lads. It has been a pleasure, and like the Six Nations Championship, this one has been a marathon and not a sprint. So we'll leave it there. My thanks again to David, to Iestyn, and to Jack, and I'll be sure to have you on at a later date, possibly Six Nations time, possibly Highland Cup time. College has a stranglehold on my free time at the moment, so it's all down to that, really. As always, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Spotify. One of these you're probably watching or listening on, at Kalon S Rugby, and on my website. You'll find links for those below, and I'll be back in due course with the next edition of the My Life in Rugby interview series, and there'll be some fan-based coverage thrown in between. Finally, I hope you all enjoyed this podcast, and I hope we summed up the mood of the rugby following in Ireland on what was a special weekend. Ireland are Grand Slam champions. Johnny Sexton got his perfect send-off. Ireland are on top of the world, and as far as we're concerned, we absolutely love it. Take care and go easy, folks.
Nice one.